Welcome to this installment of Princeton Theological Seminary's Future of American Democracy series. My name is Heath Carter, and I'm the Associate Professor of American Christianity here at the seminary. It's my great pleasure to serve as the moderator of this series. Over the course of this year, we are bringing together leaders from across government, media, the church, the academy, to discuss the big questions shaping our civic life together. Today's conversation will focus on the past, present, and future of the National Council of Churches and mainline or ecumenical Protestantism more broadly, such an important tradition in the American past and I think in the American future as well. I am absolutely delighted to be in this conversation today with Bishop Vashti Murphy McKenzie. She's the Interim General Secretary and President of the National Council of Churches, representing 37 communions, 100,000 churches, and 30 million people. She's also the 117th elected and consecrated bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the first woman elected to episcopal office in the more than 2-century-old AME Church, and the first woman to serve as president of the Council of Bishops and president of the General Board. Bishop McKenzie has been active in social justice issues for more than 3 decades. She was appointed in 2009 by President Barack Obama to be on the inaugural White House Commission of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. So such a privilege to have her with us today. If you have questions about or suggestions for the series, please email democracy.panels@ptsim.edu. To keep up to date with the wider conversations we're convening, check us out at ptsim.edu. But without further ado, welcome Bishop McKenzie. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you really for having me. It is a pleasure, it's an honor to be invited to be engaged in conversation and dialogue.
Well, it's really a privilege for us. I think about, so we were just saying, for almost coming up on a year now, been at the helm of really a historic and vital organization in American Christian life and American life more broadly. And just at the outset here, I'd love to think. So, I mean, I'm a historian. I think a lot about kind of the role of Christianity in American public life, and the tradition that the National Council represents has been a vital one in American life for a long time. And certainly in the not too distant past was a tradition that thought of itself in some sense as the conscience of the nation, as playing a vital role in kind of helping to guide the nation through challenging questions, public questions. But we also know that, the tradition around this, sort of the mainline traditions, the ecumenical traditions that the council has been a vital leader of over the last, century plus. It's a different moment for them, and a changed moment for these churches. So I wonder if just at the outset, as you have come into leadership of this important organization, and as you look out at the landscape of kind of mainline or ecumenical Protestantism, what do you see from your vantage?
Well, I can say that the National Council of Churches is alive and well and doing its work. The NCC represents, let's say, the moral and prophetic voice in the public square. I believe that the National Council of Christian Churches in the USA, that is our whole title, is uniquely positioned to be the voice of reason, the wisdom, the prophetic voice in a very divisive world. We are at the door, or this point in time in history, where we will either bounce up and be able to come together as a nation, or we will be awfully divided. And so with competing voices, with negative voices, oppressive voices, angry voices, the inability to sit down and have conversation about the things that we are all passionate about, the permission that has been given in this country to denigrate people, to dehumanize people. I read an article not so long ago. It said, you can judge a country by many things. You can judge them by their economics, their financial stability, their military right, how well they live, their social economic standing. Or there's another way to judge a country by how they treat their children.
Yeah.
And at this moment, at this tick of the clock, there are just too many tiny little coffins being lowered in the grave. and too many families who are grieving the early demise of their children. So I think the trauma that this country is going through, our children are talking to us, and they're talking to us in very violent and negative ways. And so it's either violent, or it's either addictions or other kinds of disruption in their physical and mental being. So we are really at a critical point in our country. And I think that the National Council of Churches, with our 37 communions or denominations, 100,000 congregations, I think that we could be, can play a critical role in the healing of this nation, and also for the call to Christian character. You know, there is a character crisis in this country. You know, moral depravity is, you know, is elevated. Right is no longer right. Right is wrong. Wrong is right. The truth is nothing but the truth is no longer the truth and nothing but the truth. And so there's a character crisis. And so what would faith organizations do but respond to that by elevating Christian character, not weaponizing religion, you know, not politicizing religion, but elevating Christian character, elevating character. And I think character is going to be a big word going forward in this coming year.
Wow. There's so much there to unpack. I love it. You know, I think about this moment. So part of our spring theme is sort of looking at the role that institutions play, both in the kind of Christian life and also in national life. And you know, one of the most striking things in sort of the development and evolution of Christian institutions over the last couple of decades has been this historic disaffiliation. And it's not just religious institutions that are experiencing this, but it's all kinds of institutions. There's really a crisis of faith in institutions across our society. And I think for some of the reasons that you've just underscored, right, in terms of some of our institutions haven't been serving us well, and whether it's our children or any of a number of other indicators, we see and are experiencing kind of visceral ways the failures of institutions. And yet we also, you know, we had Cheryl Eiffel on our campus here last week talking about how institutions are vital and necessary for democracy, and for democracy to thrive. We need healthy institutions, so we need to transform them. One of the questions you're with her on that. Yeah, and one of the things I think is interesting and challenging, and I wonder how you all think about this, is because we need strong institutions, we need faithful institutions, but there's a lot of, especially in younger generations, mistrust and again, in many cases, rightfully so. How do we persuade people to get involved in institutional work and to fight for the shape of a better institutions? You know, how do we? I wonder if you think about that at the level of the NCC and about sort of the work that you all are doing.
Well, there's a whole, you know, there are a lot of ways I can respond to that, but let me first say that people do not know what's at stake. All I know is what I know at the moment, and it may go down. It may come up as I'm good, I'm all right. My neighborhood's good. You know, whatever little piece of job I have, it's all right. Whatever little stuff, we're fine. And so all of that stuff is out there. I'm disconnected. You know, 7 degrees of separation. You know, this hasn't touched my house, so I don't know what you're all upset about. You know, I'm functioning fine. So we may not understand really what's at stake. The second thing is this confirmation bias. When we believe something, we look for those, we are drawn to those things that confirm what we believe. And so I see something and I click on it, I believe it, whether that belief is right or wrong. I mean, it could be totally false, but because I believe it, you know, I follow those things that confirm my belief. And I don't like to be confronted, which is really extraordinary for people of faith. You know, we tend to go to church to be confirmed by what we believe. We don't go to church to be confronted by the word of God.
Wow.
Which is extraordinary because that's what Jesus did. He come, bam. I mean, you know, let me tell you a little story about this, right? And then at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the story, boom, you get shot between the eyes. Wow, the trap door opened and we fell right into it. And then that confronts us to examine where we stand, examine where we believe. You heard it this way, but I said it this way. That's Jesus. Blessed are the poor. This is Jesus. He is confronting it. Don't give the way everybody else get. Don't pray like everybody else pray. I want you to pray differently. Pray in my name now. All of that is confronting the religious establishment, the status quo, and confronting societal and cultural norms. So we have confirmation bias. We don't understand what's at stake. What we need to do is make it personal. Make it personal. Because some of the issues are so big, huge. I don't know what to do about systemic racism. Ooh, that's a huge issue. I don't know what to do with this newer generation. I don't know what to do about gun violence. I don't know what to do about this. The issue is just too big. So I tend to shut down on it. And because of the nature of our digital verse, we see it over and over again. I mean, you're old enough to grow up that you didn't hear about everything that happened in Korea or China or Turkey or Asia or the Philippines. But every day, 29 people died in the Philippines, and then 37 people died in Mexico, and 40 people were kidnapped in Haiti, and something else happened in Canada. And there's an oil spill way up in a place that you've never even heard before. And so all of these things that used to be far away are now very close. And that's the far away places. We're not even talking about the trauma and tragedy and trouble that's happening right around us. And so because it's so big, what happens to us? We have fatigue, trauma fatigue, trouble fatigue, crisis fatigue. I don't want to see it anymore. I disconnect myself. So to make it personal is that you have a personal responsibility. All right. A personal responsibility to be sure that you do not discriminate in your sphere of influence. Wow. Okay. So what does that look like? That means I will not tolerate anyone to be discriminatory in my presence. I will not laugh at that joke that dehumanizes another group of people. I will not affirm the mistreatment of people who we're all created in the image of God, right where I am, whether I'm in the classroom, whether I'm in the business, whether I'm in church, whether I'm in government. I take personal responsibility for my actions. So if everybody did that, if I change, my household changes. My household changes, my community changes. My community changes, the country. It's that process. No. You're not disconnected from this. I think Martin Luther King Jr. talks about the connection of our mutuality. We are all connected. Whatever happens to one happens to the other. We're all connected in this wonderful tapestry called humanity in the United States. And just because a thread gets loose, we don't cut the thread off. We figure out how we put that thread back in place. And that's Bible. If I see your brother, it's in, what I do, help them get back into place. We've forgotten all of that. Make it personal. Make it personal.
Wow. You've used this language, and I love it, of kind of prophetic witness, and that the church is witnessing to justice and having a kind of courageous voice in our moment. And I wonder, another challenge that certainly is facing our society right now, and that the churches are involved with in different ways, is polarization, and the ways in which we have increasingly Americans live in different places than people they disagree with. They shop at different places. They worship different places, and there's a lot of sociological research indicating that people don't change their minds fundamentally by reading books. They change their minds by who they talk to. And so, one of the things I've wondered about, and I think about this in the history of the federal and the national council. I mean, in 1946, the Federal Council of Churches became the first predominantly white organization in the country to condemn Jim Crow. And that made some folks within its constituencies angry. And over the next 20 years, as the country moves through kind of the civil rights era, the constituencies within and around the federal and national council, you've got leaders who are trying to take those prophetic stands, and they're at the same time trying to hold together this unwieldy coalition, right? And it's really challenging work. And because I guess the benefit is if you can bring that coalition with you, that's a lot of people that you can get to take that prophetic stand with you. There's this new book by David Hollinger about Christianity's American fate, and he's really concerned that we've done a lot of work on the rise of the religious right. He says, but if you really want to understand kind of the predominance of Trumpian Christianity in the 21st century, you also have to look at the decline of ecumenical Protestantism, which in the 60s was a huge force in our society and stood for democracy and stood for pluralism and civil rights and anti-war. And one of his things is I think he basically argues in one chapter in that book that, the part of that decline has to do with the fact that at the national level, leaders took prophetic stands and then the people didn't come with them. So I wonder how you think about this stuff and how you think about that, the vital need for the churches to take prophetic stands for justice, but also the vital need to convince people to come with us in that, you know what I mean? And to join us in those stands. How does that happen? What do you think? This is a toughie.
Yeah, well, it's called allies. The National Council, the federal group, National Council of Churches in 1950, we're celebrating 73 years of existence and getting ready to launch our 75th anniversary projects moving towards 2025. Came together because they, I believe they saw the chaos that was created when communions or denominations competed with each other. And they saw the value of collaboration. That if we come together, ecumenism, if we come together, find our common ground, stand on that, understanding that we won't agree on everything, but there's something that we can agree on. And we stand there. From that, we build the bridge of our partnering and our collaborating together to create a greater voice. So in order to be heard then, in order to be seen then, in order to get things done, there had to be a greater voice. So when they came together because they were upset, mad, angry, or whatever, at the treatment of workers in the industrial age. The treatment of children being forced to work, child labor, and how workers were treated during the industrial age. They all came together to be sure that somebody needs to speak up and somebody needs to say. So that was the common ground. And then moving ahead, well, wait a minute, not only are these workers and children who are suffering in this particular era, so are people of color. And so we gather around that. And the mistake was made when people began to believe that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 satisfied everything. It was one and done. We got it and gone, right? We got it and gone. So this piece of legislation settled everything. And that was not true. The issue was the law was created, the law of the land, the federal law, all of that was created, yes, to protect people, but our let's say our love for humanity had not all the way taken a hold. So you got a group of people, we love you, we with you, hey, we have great allies, but we thought, or some people thought, that it was one and done and we're through with it, without realizing that every generation must build on the foundation of previous generation this work of protection of rights, protection of people. Yes, civil rights, human rights, justice is never one and done. It is never one and done. And when you stop and when you relax, go, okay, I'm going on home to do whatever else I'm going to do. Then that's when the pendulum begins to swing in the other area. And we don't pay attention to it till it's screaming at you in your face. Like, how do we get to this place?
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you think it's important in this kind of fractious moment in our country's life, and I wonder for the National Council and the AME, I mean, how how important is it to at once, and is it possible to at once take a strong prophetic stand and to remain in conversation with people who don't, at least yet, join in that stand?
Mhm.
How is it possible to do those things? Do you find it, is it an important part of the work? In other words, like, there are Christians who think differently theologically than I do, and they vote differently than I do, and to what extent should we be, as on the one hand taking these stands, on the other hand trying to remain in some kind of relationship or whatnot with folks who maybe won't join us, or at least don't join us yet? How do you think about that?
It would be wonderful to create what I call tables of transformation, where
Mm,
people with different views and different ideas have an opportunity to talk.
mhm.
Many times, I think you're correct, many
Mm,
times we do not understand people who don't look like us, talk like us, live like us, believe like us, because we
mm.
have not been exposed.
Yeah.
We have not had an opportunity to go like, oh, well, you do that too. Uh,
Mm,
we have interfaith dialogues. We have
mm,
4 convening tables that do several kinds of work. Of course, faith and order, that's theology. We have our Christian Ed, our
mm,
CUS, which is
mhm,
the National Council of Churches produces annually the International Sunday School. That's the Sunday school lesson
mm,
that you
mhm,
have in your lesson. That's
mhm,
NCC puts that together, the Home
mm,
Bible Study. We are the stewards of the NRSV, and now the
mm,
updated edition. And we have interfaith dialogues between
mm,
Jews and Christians and Muslims and so forth. Last year, when I first came aboard, the
mhm,
convening table held a dialogue where our Jewish brothers and sisters
mm,
shared what is the particulars
mhm,
of this season for them. That this is what
mm,
Passover is, and this is what we do for Passover. Then our
mhm,
Muslim brothers and sisters shared with us, this is what we do Ramadan. This is what
mm,
our cycle is. And then, of course, Christians shared, this is Holy
mm,
Week, and this is what this
mhm,
means as we move towards the resurrection.
mm,
What happened in that dialogue, what happened at
mm,
the end of that dialogue,
mm,
you had people went like, oh,
mm,
you fast too?
mm, mhm,
Yes. But we fast. Not only do we fast food, but we fast from this, we fast from
mm.
that, we fast from this. Seriously?
Wow.
Yes. We have this season of prayer. Really? You
Mm,
too? So,
mm,
that was like a common ground there. As I said, if we can find the common ground, we won't agree on everything, but we can
mhm.
stand on this.
Yeah.
Let's stand
Yeah.
on that and build the bridge out from there so that
Mm,
we're not competing and fighting with each other. We become allies.
wow.
I mean,
Wow.
I love what Sweet Honey in the Rock. Sweet Honey in the Rock is a music group based out of Washington, D.C., and they sing a
Mm,
song that says, "We who love freedom will not rest until everyone is free,
wow.
until the concern for um, uh, Black boys dying
Mhm,
and Black mothers' grief is the same as white boys dying
mm,
and white
mhm.
mothers' grief." And
Yeah.
so that won't happen unless we talk to each other,
Yeah.
unless we dialogue with it. That's why I say NCC is uniquely positioned
Yeah.
to say, let's come, let us reason together.
Mm,
Let,
wow.
let's let's talk about it. Let's create a table of transformation, not only here, but in various
Mm,
different places so that we can begin to see each
mm,
other's humanity,
wow.
each other's humanity.
Part of what I love about the way you're thinking about that in this initiative, the tables of transformation, is I hear in your voice, and you've only been at this work for a year, so I'm excited to follow it, but a kind of sense of um, ambition and hopefulness about what the National Council might have to do, the work ahead, and I wonder, I think there's folks right now who think, oh, this is the traditions that, come out of Princeton Seminary and mainline seminaries, the traditions around the National Council, they're kind of on their last legs. But I don't hear that in your voice. I hear what I hear is a kind of hopefulness about kind of what the work ahead might be. And so I wonder, how do you think about this? Do you think about this as a season of reaching out to new audiences and connecting with new folks? Do you think about it as a season of kind of gathering the faithful that remain? How are you thinking about, and again, you're a year into this work almost, how do you think about the shape of the work that you're doing at the National Council? What do you hope for as you continue in your leadership there?
Well, let me tell you, yes, I am hopeful. Because without hope, you can't raise children without hope. You can't go to a job and think you're going to perform without a hope. That you have to be hopeful about what you do. I see the work expanding. NCC is about advocacy. We are the voice for people who cannot speak in places where we go, where they cannot be. We are the voice for those who don't have a voice or don't even know they have a voice and cannot use a voice. We are a place where we unite our voices, because there are 37, 37 tones, 37 tones of voices, and but we also unite our values. So it's voice and values in our advocacy as well as our activism. We have to be not only be the voice, but we also have to be seen in action doing things. So over the past year, our activism has taken on, a different meaning, a new meaning. We have always been, NCC has been very active in the past for mass incarceration, for Act Now Racism, which are two pillars for NCC, as well as for reparations. But in the last year, you have seen us in a variety of places. You have seen us at the rallies against violence against our children and school children. We were on the grounds in Buffalo, and the aftermath of the Tops Market shooter. We were on the ground in Texas when those school children died. We're going to be on the ground soon at the appropriate moment in Turkey and Syria. To be a pastoral presence and witness there for our brothers and sisters who are suffering after the earthquake. You saw us bringing information toolkits. We have toolkits. One is response to Christian suicide, response of Christians to suicide, to be able to help people make better decisions and help the people around them make better decisions to advocate for life. We have a church-based toolkit as we move towards the midterm elections, which became brandable for member denominations as well as non-member denominations. And that was one click on a QR code. You could find out if you were registered, if you need to re-register, what your registration dates were, what is your early voting dates, if that is in your area, or where with the dates of the election, where your polling place is, because a lot of it moved, and what kind of ID that you need to have. And so that was released, of course, to all of our congregations. We participated in training poll chaplains so that people who went to the polls knew that there was a safe person there. If I need somebody to pray with before I go in, if I know that there is a praying and calm presence, in case there's somebody out there shouting and screaming and saying, no, you can't do this. No, there's a presence there who will know what to do and how to help you along that way. So, this is the side of activism that is coupled to our advocacy. We are initiating, actually we're reinitiating our health task forces, health and wellness task force that is being initiated, where we are inviting our health commissioners, health officers, health experts from our various denominations to come together to take a look at the issues that we really need to tackle as far as health is concerned. During the pandemic, of course, NCC was that the prayerful and commending presence, but it also was champion vaccines, especially in areas where it was hard for them, or they didn't trust the healthcare system to come and get vaccines. So NCC during that time was a champion of vaccines. But there's more that we need to do in the area of health disparities. When you take a look at the healthcare process, it is sickness to wellness. Can we move to wellness to care?
Well, yeah.
I was privileged to be with a group of faith leaders yesterday at HSS, Health and Human Services, and met with the new secretary, where we talked about the things that we were doing and the kinds of things that we were looking for that department to do. Activism. We are initiating a policy roundtable that debuts in May, where we're inviting policy experts of our members as well as non-members to talk about strategy in policy development and policy models that exist, and how we can be participants in formulating the best approaches in policy, because we know that policy informs praxis, and we have some policies with a lot of unintended consequences in our country. So we want to be able to study it, and then also see how, as we talk to communions, as we talk with communions, that we can provide the best policy platform possible. So we're not sitting on our history. We're not sitting on our laurels. We are out there advocating, we're collaborating, we're partnering, and we're also being activists.
Wow. What a remarkable array of work that you're doing, and so many opportunities, it sounds like, to kind of be involved and engaged in work that really matters. I wonder.
I can tell you that we're of course we're open for partnering, and I can tell you how. One way. This spring semester, we are partnering with Harvard Kennedy School graduate school. They have a course there about social justice and action, and there is a class of students right now who are working on reparations. They are developing a toolkit for local congregations to understand what it is. People just think it's 40 acres and more is money. Nope, it's more. Reparative justice is not just that. And so they are preparing a toolkit on reparative justice. They are developing a model that can be used, an advocacy model that can be used. And I cannot wait until May when I go up to Harvard to hear what these students have been doing. So you're talking about how you interest young voices in this work by giving them an opportunity, not telling them what to do, giving them an opportunity to research, to look, to develop new approaches, fresh minds, fresh vision on a very old subject. This is how you are. So if Kristen would like to partner with us.
Let's talk. I mean, I was actually at a convening here in town last week. Johnson C. Smith Seminary was hosting a convening about reparations. And this is actually one of the comments that I had made. And I love the idea, that young people are such a resource in this work and have so much creativity and so much to bring. So let's talk about more about possibilities there. I wonder what you think in terms of what are the greatest, so many opportunities. What are the greatest challenges for the National Council right now in the work that it's doing? And maybe for you personally, I mean, what do you find most challenging about this work, this vital work that you're doing?
It's 24/7. It is 24/7. And of course, the challenge is you cannot answer every call. You have to determine which places where you spend your energy, your time, and your resources. We have a small staff. We would love to have a larger staff, and that means dollars and cents, in order to do that. And so that means, we look for people who believe in what we do and will donate towards what we do so we can expand staff. And as we expand staff, we can expand the reach. And it won't feel like 24/7. The other challenges are ones that faced many organizations is that you sometimes feel like you're the lone voice, you're the voice in the wilderness crying out. And we look for other voices who will come along with us and sing the same song, shout the same shout, so that we can all be heard. And I believe in amplified voices. No one area, no one entity, no one school, no one, facility, no one, whatever, has all the answers. But when we come together and unite our voices and values, then we have a diverse perspective, and I think we can move forward better. I think we be heard in the public square. Many times people come to us and they go like, well, how come you haven't spoken out on this? I said, we have. How come you haven't said? I said, we did. How come whatever, da-da-da-da. Well, we heard so-and-so do that. Well, they have a bigger platform. And fear sells and hate sells and whatever. They're not going to come and hear us say, what we really need to do is take a moment and sit down to the table of transformation. They don't want to they want to hear like, we're going to burn this place down. And so that becomes the soundbite that goes around and around. And people say, well, aren't you going to say anything about this?
Yeah.
We did.
Wow. Yeah.
Y'all weren't listening or didn't want to pay attention.
I love it. I wonder, we're heading for May and commencement here, and we're going to send out the latest class of seminarians into the world, where some of them are going to be pastors, some of them are going to be working in nonprofits. They're going to be kind of sprinkled all over the nation and the world. And it's a hard time, as you know, and you've just spoken to so eloquently, to lead an institution. It's a hard time to do this work with a 24-hour news cycle and crises seemingly on every which way you look. And so I wonder, and I think about this for myself and teaching our students, what kind of encouragement or advice would you give to them as they seek to go out into the world and be faithful leaders in this challenging moment?
Jesus died and you don't have to. You're no longer required to get up on the cross. Jesus already died. He did not go back to the tomb, and you don't have to go back to the cross or back to the tomb. The other thing I would say is that you can't do it all. Wow. So you have to pick the places where you do. That's a challenge, because everybody, no, we ought to do this, we ought to do that. Let's see if we can pick 5 things. This is where we're going to.
How do you do that? How do you? I think that's tough, right? Because part of the draw there is there's all these important concerns and all these vital issues. How do you do that prioritization? Is it the community around you? How do you think about that?
Well, as a pastor, pastoring in the rural area, pastoring in the urban core, I advocate for doing a needs assessment. So when I was assigned to Payne Memorial in Baltimore, I did a needs assessment because I was surrounded by major ministries, diverse ministry, Baptist, Episcopal, Methodist, AME, a Presbyterian church was right up the street from me. So who were doing all good work. So we did a needs assessment, congregation and community, to find out what was not being done. Because if it's being done, it is being done well. It may be better for us to support them in doing it, and then we do what's not being done. So we found, that there was Bethel had an outreach center that was doing fabulous work. Another one had a young adult center getting gangs off the street and the like, but there was nothing for children. And we found we were in the urban core, understand we're in the urban core. And so children unattended, not because they're being neglected, but because their families have to work 2-3 jobs in order to make a whole paycheck. Unattended latchkey children, there was nothing for them. And so we developed an after-school program. Then we developed a Saturday academy. We used college students to come in and with homework assistance, which was a wonderful benefit. You go to college? Yeah. Oh, your parents must be rich. No, I work every day. Working my way through college. So if I can do it, you can do it. It was a wonderful benefit from that. So do a needs assessment, find out what really needs to be done. And in that congregation, we identified 10 issues. These are the 10 specific issues that we see that is needed in our area, inside and outside of the church. And then we just started doing the selection process where we got down to 5. Then we had to say, it's not that these other 5 are not important. Is that if we tried to do all 10, we would stretch ourselves too thin and we really would not be doing well. We really would not be getting the kinds of results that we would like to have if we do that. So I would say pastors do a needs assessment. There's no point in providing apples when they really need oranges. So do that. Now, in the context of a nonprofit, you do something similar. Do something similar. So with staff, we, what priorities do you see? What challenges do you think? Why NCC in the first place? What's your why inside NCC? And of course, we got a list of 10. We've been in the process of making that list smaller to at least we got down to 5. We'd like to get down to 3, but we, at least get down to 5. And then let's see how our work grows out of that and how that work lines up with the Constitution and bylaws of NCC, which list the purposes and things. So it is like, this says what we are going to do. That says what we are doing. And let's see how they come and mesh together. Let's see how they come and mesh together. Pick your fight, Pastor. Whether you're a pastor or you're executive director inside of a nonprofit, you cannot do it all. So pick the things that you can do that well. It is better to say, wow, we got the results we needed. We did this well. Then everybody say, well, we see y'all, but we don't know what you're doing. And nothing that you're doing well.
Wow. I love it. And I'm so glad that you are at the NCC, and I can't wait to see how the work that you're doing continues to grow out of it and the work that the organization is going to do in the years ahead. Such a vital past, present, and I think future as well. So thank you so much, Bishop McKenzie. It was such a privilege to be in this conversation with you.
Thank you for having me. Like I said, you honored me by extending the invitation in the first place. And I enjoyed our conversation, and I hope it was a benefit. It will be a benefit to those who listen and watch.
It will. I can promise you that. All right.